You're from the same I'm from around here, yes. An hour outside. Yes. Okay, yeah. All right, here we go. We are going to do our last panel. We are starting the last panel. Butts. Butts. There's a baby in the room. All right, so our last panel for this conference is We Don't Leave This Work Untouched. So, caregiving changes people to witness birth, death, grief, survival, tenderness, trauma, hope, fear, love, and loss day after day is to be shaped by those experiences in ways that are often invisible to the outside world. Care work does not end when the room empties. Some moments stay in the body, some stories linger for years, some grief is carried quietly, and some beauty never leaves. This closing panel explores the emotional, spiritual, physical, and relational impact of caregiving across the full life spectrum. Together, our panelists will reflect on the realities of holding space for others, while also carrying their own humanity, exhaustion, grief, joy, and transformation. We will discuss the emotional weight that caregivers often bring home with them. The cumulative impact of witnessing vulnerability and suffering, the tension between compassion and burnout, and the ways this work reshapes how we understand life, death, relationships, and our work. But mostly ourselves. So, most importantly, this conversation asks, how do we continue this work with openness and humanity without losing ourselves inside of it? So, I'm going to get everybody to introduce themselves. So again, we know who is answering the questions.
I am Janet Handy. My business name is Choice Through Birth. I am a birth doula, abortion doula, and a reproductive care ally.
My name is Suzanne Lim. My business is named Birth Partners Support Services. I'm a birth doula, postpartum doula, and a childbirth educator based in Toronto.
I am Crystal Potter. My business is Ascending Intentionally. I am in Georgia, and I am a death doula and grief support.
My name is Mary Farrelly. I'm a NICU nurse, NICU doula, nurse educator, and owner of the NICU Academy NICU Translator.
I'm Dr. Jody Hall. I'm a professor in a school of nursing and a program coordinator for our doula studies program at Fanshawe College. I've been a doula for 3 decades, and so that work has intersected with birth, death, abortion, and all sorts of transitions in between.
All right, so to start us off, what does the phrase "we don't leave this work untouched" mean to you personally and professionally?
So I'll start. I think for me, like this is a big thing in my abortion work. So the first abortion I actually supported for the collective, I walked into the same post-op room I was in 16 years before that. So I thought I dealt with all that, and I had. It was more of a healing process for me. I found my drive and my passion in this business, and from that moment on, I was like, okay, this work can change us in good ways too. We can heal ourselves through these people too, right? Because I think a lot of the stories that we'll share up here today are the negative side of it and how we hold on to all these negative things. But I think it's also beautiful that you can do that work and kind of gain that for yourself.
And first of all, I want to say is these questions are killer. You hired somebody with a PhD in question asking. Some of these are so profound, and nobody throughout these 3 days has ever answered by saying, I don't know. So I reserve the right to be the first person to say that. Can you ask it again?
Yes. What does the phrase, we don't do this work untouched, mean to you personally and professionally?
I just don't think there is any way to do this kind of primal work without, if you're doing it right, and remain untouched. Watching life enter the world and watching life leave this world, this is what it's all about. And if you are doing it right, it's going to change who you are, your very essence. And for me, it has profoundly changed my relationships. The one big lesson that I've learned is that everybody has a story. Everybody comes from somewhere, and everybody brings something to where we are right now. And we all need to pause and take that into account whenever we are interacting with any of our clients.
She took mine. I think exactly that. You can't do this kind of work, be it from the beginning or to the very end, without being unchanged. You said it beautifully, eloquently.
Yeah, I think at the core of everything that all of us do is, and whenever I get stuck in the weeds or get overwhelmed by it all, is remembering that we are humans taking care of humans. And when you boil it down to that, even the hard moments that you witnessed or see, if you bring it to that foundational piece, that's why we're here. We're building connections and relationships, and we're meant to transform each other in connection and in community and in relationship. And so there's no way that you can be untouched. It's like all these little marbles that are bouncing into each other, and we're pinging off and going in different directions, but we're leaving little marks on each other as we do that. And sometimes it's overwhelming, but most of the time I'm like, that's so sacred and so cool too, to be able to be transformed by another human's experience.
Here it comes.
No, not at all. I'm too tired.
So
No, all of that I think is really beautiful. When I was thinking about kind of how I've matured across or grown with the experiences I've had, I think what it's gifted me in terms of change is a recognition that being affected has just as much possibility to be affirming and positive, as was mentioned previously, or by someone here we're going to talk about the negative, but the ways that I look at my life and take inventory now are only in what an incredibly privileged life that I've led to be able to be trusted in people's most vulnerable spaces. And so I've let go of some of the language that I think I would have defined those impacts earlier in my life, and tried to approach it from this awe and this curiosity about how am I so lucky to have been chosen at this point in my life to be welcomed into this person's whatever that is, and to have provided the resources around me necessary that allow me to always foster the possibility to see what's beneficial about this work rather than what it has compromised for myself.
Just not gonna cry so much on this one. Okay. How has caregiving work changed you emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically, or relationally over time?
I think for me, I do see the spiritual side of it more, and I think it is something that you almost need to lean into with abortion work, is that there is a greater purpose behind this, even if they believe that or not. And I think I see that too with my birth work. I always say my clients are led to me for a reason, and sometimes I don't figure out what that reason is. I'm sure that's going to be a life lesson. But I do feel that there is a massive like spiritual aspect to this work as well.
We can pour to that, you can do whatever you want.
I'll tell a little story quickly. In 2017, my father passed away. There's been a lot about death work over the last 3 days, more than I've ever in my life heard about, never spoken about death so deeply and profoundly before. But in 2017, my father got sick. He was diagnosed with lung cancer, and within a month, he passed away. But his death was, and I know I can say this here, was the most beautiful, beautiful experience ever. And we surrounded him, our hands were on him, and we literally told him, Daddy, it's okay to go. And he went. And the very next birth I was at, I had to step back because I was like, holy shit, this is practically the same thing. And ever since then, and so by then I had been a birth doula for many, many years, but it wasn't until then that I realized that this is all connected. This is all connected, and that's a little woo-woo spirituality thing. Everybody has their own place on the spectrum, religion, spirituality, but that connection became so apparent after my dad's death. That birth and death are so intimately connected, and wow, I can't believe that I'm doing, just like you said, Jody, what a privilege it is to be here in this place where I can witness it over and over again with every single client. I am reminded of my father. Every new baby that comes into this world, I am reminded of that experience, that we're here to witness these profound parts of life. I'm fine now.
I think it's changed me. It's both softened me and I don't want to say hardened, but definitely given me less tolerance for bullshit, right? It softens me in that I can appreciate and see people where they are, but I cut through it. I don't have time for all this. We are on a truncated timetable, and it changes you to your core, like you said. For all of us, we're changed forever. I hope that that's what happens with this people in this room, that changes you, because it should.
I feel the same way that sometimes when I'm interacting with people who aren't in this field and in this work, there's almost a feeling of, I can see beyond that outer layer. Like you automatically are allowed to go like below the surface, and I feel like you can see the deeper meaning of everybody that's in your sphere, whether or not they know it or not. So sometimes there's a little bit of a heaviness to that, knowing that like, if only you knew how sacred your life is and how special you are to be here, and you're dealing with this day-to-day minutia, and just like drop in for a second. And I know that part of the reason why we're all being called into this work is that we're like, like the light workers, to bring this level of light and understanding to those that are not in this world too. So, or not in this world, but in this type of ecosystem of doulaing. And so, before I was able to kind of do that full spectrum of understanding, I was seeing in roles and protocols of academies having lived in healthcare. And then the more that I got deeper and deeper into the humanity of it, all that just dissolves. And it just comes down to like, again, that we're people on this earth, that we're connecting with people, and their stories are meant to tell you something. We might not know it in the moment, but reflecting on it, you can see this incredible arc of your life and how everyone intertwines. And that's
I was reflecting on, for those of you who were here when I did my talk, there's a very young version of Jody at my first birth in 1996. And so I've been thinking a lot about that as I approach that anniversary sometime in July, and thinking about what that looks like, how that has changed who I was, and if I was to remember who I was at that time, and all the assumptions I made about the type of births that I would be encountering, the types of feelings that would be in the room, the way that infants would be welcomed into the world, and just about everything I thought I knew to be true at every stage in that journey has been unlearned or proven wrong. And so learning to develop the elasticity to accommodate when your certainties become uncertain, I think is a place that you'll need to, I continue to try and practice, and I think as younger or more novice doulas come up, that I would encourage them to encounter is to be a little bit softer around the things that they feel so true or so passionate, so right, so righteous in, that perhaps maybe to be a little less certain, not compromising, but maybe to allow there to be more doubt or their certainty to be unsettled so that you can welcome humility and that you can develop self-compassion for all of the people, all of the care providers, all of the families, all the people that you are going to encounter on this journey. It is one of the most unpredictable paths that you can ever attempt to walk or to be in for any sustainable length of time. And so I feel like I'm continuing to still unfold even after all of these years. I still couldn't answer that question with certainty about how it's changed me. The journey isn't done yet.
I tell all of the doulas in the collective every time, like I talk to them or we do a debrief, I always remind them, if you're not learning something from every client, every birth, and every loss, and every death, you're not doing doula work right.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
I just want to add a little pragmatism as well as the beautiful spiritual stuff we just said. Over the past 22 years of doing this work, when I first became a doula, I was married, had a much more stable financial situation, and 3 years later my marriage fell apart. So I had to learn real quick how to make money in this business so I can support my 5 children by myself. And that has changed me profoundly. It has given me strength. It's made me realize, oh, I can do this. I hear over and over that, oh, the burnout rate in this business is like 3 years. And I'm like, what? So what did those people do after 3 years? I didn't know I had a choice. So 3 years into this business, I just was keeping going because I had to pay the bills. And I'm still doing that. Now it's just me, my children are all grown up, but I still need to have a roof over my head and pay the bills. So I'm still here after 22 years, and that gives me a real sense of solidity and groundedness.
Can I ask you a question? And I'm gonna ask it because I think it is important for a lot of newer or younger doulas.
Yeah.
Was there a point where you ever considered quitting and going and getting a normal Monday to Friday, 9 to 5?
I don't know how to do anything else. This is it. All I know is babies, bellies, boobs, breastfeeding. I don't know how to do anything else. Sure, just joking. Yeah, sure, I did. It crossed my mind many times, but some of the real, ethereal, abstract, spiritual elements of doula work kept me here, and also the fact that the practical elements, like I need to be my own boss. I will not be told what to do by anybody. I need to set my own hours. I need to choose to go to the lake with my family one day if I want to, and not have to punch a clock. So the practicalities of being an entrepreneur also kept me here. And when I would look at what I would give up, that freedom is worth at least $50,000 a year. The freedom that I have running my own business, and that's what stopped me. And also because, like I said, this is what I know. This is what I feel like I belong here. And I don't want to go somewhere else and try to build a new belonging somewhere else.
Was there a moment early in your work where you realized this profession would stay with you long after the experience itself ended?
I mean, I can speak to that from a nursing perspective too, and working in doula work. I had those rose-colored glasses on in the beginning, like it's gonna be like I can do hard things and I can make a difference, and like this is not going to clock in, clock out, and I have this like pathway of career in my mind, and back to the darker side of things, the very first time that I was in the NICU as a new nurse and experienced a code event, so like a baby who was actively dying unexpectedly, which is not always the case, but it can happen in the NICU, and hearing the visceral scream of that mother, I still get chills thinking about it. I was like, it was that moment of being like, do I stay here? Like, can I be in this space? Like, where is it in my textbook? Like, this wasn't taught to me how to be in this world. And fortunately, I had such a experienced, beautiful preceptor, as we call them nursing, like, who was there to hold my space in my transformation. But it felt like that same, like, birthing of a mother, and like, I was someone before that. It's the birth of like a bedside nurse, of like, as a doula, I was like, I'm reviving and I'm never gonna be the same. But it was that sound that just like sank into your heart and you were never the same again.
I think my story, like, once I finished doula school, so I originally trained as just a birth doula, and when I finished my schooling, I had the craziest month ever. Like, even the things that happened, like, just one of the things was one of my clients broke her legs, both legs, at 39 weeks by falling down the stairs. So, like, she was given the choice, you can have a awake surgery to fix your legs, because I can't put you under, or we can induce you with broken legs. So, like, and this was just on top of my other craziness, right? So, leaving that, I would have been done after that month. If I was not such a strong person going into it, I would have been done doula work that month. And I would have been like, what the just happened here? I did my training, I did all these things that everyone laid out for us to do, and then no one talked about anything that I went through during those times. And I think that's why it is so important to like have those conversations with those baby doulas, or like those younger people who are just coming into it, who are doing those trainings, and like kind of providing those things for after, like the debrief circles, or just these little things that are not included in these trainings. Like, why doesn't a training have a debrief circle after? You're implementing their training into the world, so they should be following up on it. I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't know if it fits.
We do the debrief.
Mhm. Yes, they're very good.
Anybody else? Do you remember something?
No, I don't know.
Okay. What did I say? Yeah. Was there a moment early in your work where you realized this profession would stay with you long after you
Oh,
experienced it?
that was not my moment. Definitely not. That was the opposite of that. Oh, I think I already did. I think I answered my moment when I first talked about, my own experience.
I think that being there with my mom, I was there when she died. I was working a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, consistent job, and my mom was dying, and I split to run, and I didn't look back. I took the time off. I think I was with her the last 4 or 5 weeks, and I told my job I didn't know when I would be back, if I would be back, and taking that time, because we are such a grief-muted society. We don't talk about death. I'm a nurse too, right? We're trained to fix things. We're not trained to deal with how to die. And so for me, having to sit in that moment of the trauma of watching my mom die, and I'm not the only person that's ever done that, but knowing that people are not prepared for that, and there is a need for that, to be able to be there, be ready and help somebody to die.
What parallels do you see between abortion and birth spaces, NICU, grief spaces, palliative care, and end-of-life care when it comes to vulnerability and emotional impact?
I think all of these spaces, we stand on a threshold, right? We're between motherhood and not being a parent, or between life and death, or what have you. And, sorry, I forgot your question. Parallels, right? Like, we're on these thresholds of becoming, we're between one and two things. We're between two lives. So I think that goes with hand in hand with every bit of dueling I've heard about this week.
I also think that there are spaces where people are dangerously vulnerable to the rhetoric of choice, agency, autonomy, And whenever we default to systems that rely on information, or if only that person knew what their full range of options were, there would have been a different outcome, then we are obscuring the role that historical injustices and this system is playing in perpetuating the harms of that outcome. And so I continue in my practice, and when I'm mentoring, our students keep coming back to, would information alone fix this system? Is this just a matter of that person didn't have access to quality prenatal education, to the right selection of primary health care provider, that they didn't know how to nutritionally support themselves and their family? Are these the real outcomes of, we would call them social determinants of health within healthcare circles, but these are deeply embedded anti-Black racism, anti-indigeneity, you know, systems embedding racist ideas and belongings, the way that poverty shows up as a determinant of health. Like, we could provide the best level of care, and still we are unable to not fall into and participate in the very systems of harm that we're trying to dismantle. And so I feel like there's a lot of tensions that we work with in this moment, and so I think it's important to remember that we must always call the system to account, and for a radical reimagining of what they can be if we want sustainable actual change, that the metrics will change. Because the metrics aren't changing in terms of who is dying and who is surviving, and then who's left with the impacts of trauma as a consequence of their obstetric or end-of-life experiences. So end-of-life, birth, death, all of them, right? Agency, choice, people ought to, like, there's all of these like lofty ideas, and we're not talking about how all of those things are constrained within personal relationships. Is that relationship safe for that person? Can they birth or die at home? Is that a safe location for a care provider to enter? Abortion, does that person have the ability to access the information? Can they travel geographically? Can they take the time off work? Do they have people that will, like, every single one of them, we could say, look, within the Canadian framework, we have all sorts of access. Yeah, we do, and people operate in more complicated spaces, that none of those things matter without some foundational truths. Are people safe? Do they have safe and affirming relationships? Do they have a place to belong? Are they believed and validated in the choices that they're making? And until we do that, choice, agency are these threads that we weave, but we actually, it's a bait and switch. It's not there for most people.
And choice, and agency, and support, I think that's the big parallel between all of those transitions. There's a reason why we have in this room birth doulas, postpartum doulas, abortion doulas, end-of-life doulas, death doulas, because traditionally all of those times of life were supported by community, by family, built-in systems that by and large don't exist very much anymore for most of us. And that's what we're all doing here, is we're trying to fill the gaps left by the loss of that built-in village that we used to have that would sit with people, like communities would come and sit with people as somebody was dying and help a new mother once she gave birth. And women would gather around somebody who lost a baby or whatever. And those things are not built in anymore. We don't just assume that we're going to be surrounded by anybody when we're going through that. You have to intentionally look for it or have somebody bring it to you, and that's what we're all doing here.
We've commodified care. And wherever, if you were to look at birth, abortion, and death, every place where there is an undervalued life transition, birth, abortion, and death, you have exploited, undercompensated labor, both in terms of family caregivers and in terms of the labor force that's providing care. And so I think we tack work, abortion work, doula work, death work. Work is happening within a capitalist, and the most exploited places for that work is where it's gendered care or it's racialized care places that we find ourselves. And so, yeah, we're all brought together, but it's not by accident. Those are also the places where there's most exploitation of unpaid caregiving.
I agree with that, and I also think that similar to Epi, there's two spaces that I feel like I'm constantly being pulled in. Is that individual, like, yes, the system is the problem, and what do I do tomorrow to get through it? Like, how can I help the today and hold this space for dismantling the system that is creating the problem? So I feel like we all do. We feel that pull and tug all the time. Like, even, I think I feel it with my, like, in my small world, like, my roles as a wife and a mother and a nurse and a business owner, it's all these directions that we're being pulled in, like, from, you know, capitalist society that we live in. But also the reality that that's today, May, whatever the date is, this is the world I'm living in, what do I do today to still feel like I got through the next 24 hours the same way? So it's always like the duality and the pull, the tug and the pull and the tug, but it can create, that also can create like grief and overwhelm from those that are receiving the care and those that are providing the care.
How do moments of joy, heartbreak, hope, and grief coexist in the same time?
I think like something for full spectrum doulas that's not really talked about a lot is like sometimes that looks like you going from like cuddling a postpartum baby to then going to support someone's abortion within a matter of hours. And it's like, what are we telling these doulas? Like, there's no talk about like how you should feel in those moments. Or let's say it was reversed and you go from an abortion to then go to someone's birth or someone's house to hold their baby, and then you're gonna think that you shouldn't have feelings around that. Like, and that's when I think it's all of these feelings can happen. Like, we can have that flowing through us, but we have to pay attention to that. We actually have to revisit that. Like, we can feel those, but we have to come back to it and be like, yes, that was really sad as I was holding that baby. Like, those tears were welling up in my eyes because I felt that. I felt that grief for that mother or for that person, right? Yeah.
I'm gonna share just like a quick little story because it is the exact thing that you're saying. And it last month, on the day before my aunt died, I got a call from the hospital saying, there's a mom here, and she's a having support person. Can you come? And I was like, oh shit, like, I really don't want to because I really need to like be with myself and grieve. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. But I knew there's a good chance I'm not gonna be able to hold the space that I need to do, right? So I had another doula go, and I went with her. And while I was there, I got a message that was like, things happening. I was like, I gotta go, right? So it's like, I wanted to hold that joy, but that grief was overshadowed. And like, sometimes we push through it and sometimes we don't. And that was the moment where I was like, absolutely not, that's not gonna happen. Shit.
I think I see a lot of that in death work, right? People think that dying is just sad and it's just hard. And I mean, in all honesty, I have seen some of the most beautiful moments of humanity in those grief-stricken spaces that are just beautiful and profound. And right, it's been the whole theme of the weekend, of the week is duality. And I said, going through my own grief with my mom, like, I said, there has to be something equally as good on the other side. Two things can exist at once, and I see that so much in dying, and we don't talk about that enough. We don't talk about how that space can be truly, truly incredibly beautiful, just like a birth space.
So this time last year, somewhere around this time, I was officiating a wedding, and I have an image of this client, very pregnant, walking towards me with their partner, sitting down as a guest. I do the wedding, it's beautiful. The next day I get a call, and that somebody had died in the community. Like a very long story short, we connect, and it's this being called in to support the doula team that was supporting the pregnant woman that was a guest at the wedding I had just officiated. She had died that night. It was her last night giving birth to the baby. And so fast forward, and I'm now doing the celebration of life for the baby at the place where the wedding was with the community. And I carry her stuff around. They gifted me with some things that were reminding of her afterwards, the family. But I've twice in under 3 years have been with families where the pregnant person died in the course of giving birth to the baby. And there were doula teams attached to both of those experiences that were supposed to be supporting the family, which ended up being intensive grief support and being in-house postpartum support. And it felt impossible. Like, it was beyond binaries, it was multiplicity, it was bending us and contorting us inside out as we tried to bring doulas into it, into grief work. For them, grief work looks really particular. If you get it at all, it's stillbirth, miscarriage, and loss. It's not maternal death. We don't have a lot of practice with maternal death within this culture. And it's very rare that we would have. It's on the rise. And so it is about preparing that your first birth can have all of these things, and who's going to be your community. And man, when we showed up to do the celebration of life, all that family wanted to make sure everybody left with was that there was just as much joy. There was still room to celebrate this beautiful baby, and that the best justice you could do to the mom, to the person who passed away, was to honor this baby by supporting their life to the fullest. I've never been so marveled at the capacity of humans. Like, I don't think you could ask people to hold that tension more delicately than these families that are like so entirely embracing this baby, and they'll have to navigate every holiday, every birthday, every Mother's Day, where your birth story's your loved one's death story. And so I constantly am revisited by that notion that we are here to suffer. If anything, we get pockets of joy that we have to harness, and that if I am suffering, I know that I'm not alone in it, that we are all suffering in our own ways and in communion with one another in that way. And I have to be very intentional to remember that they are always co-present. You can always find joy in any situation if you look hard enough, and we have to help one another do that, because this is the edge that work can take you to. It's very much life or death, whether we pay attention to it in any of the work that we do as doulas. It's always there.
And I will say something about that, because there were moments during some of those experiences for you where I know that I was brought in some capacity, and there were other people brought in different capacities, and they were deep conversations that we all had to be like, okay, what is best for this family? Because, like, yes, you and I are trained in grief and death, but we don't know this family, and they're comfortable with these doulas. So is the best thing for us to teach and support those doulas so that they can go in? And truthfully, it was, and they're gaining a skill so that if that happens in the future, they know that they can support those people, right? Because maybe if it happened 3 years from now, you wouldn't be available, right? And then they wouldn't have that support. So it's always, it comes back to, even if you're not in community with someone specific, you are in community. Like, reach out to somebody and make sure that you're getting the support, the education that you need, so you can better support those that you need. Okay, how do caregivers continue showing up compassionately without becoming emotionally consumed or disconnected from themselves?
I think that the word compartmentalization has got a bad rap, but it's an essential skill for anybody who does this work. You literally need to be able to walk into space, end of life space, whatever, and put your support hat on. If you are completely overwhelmed and destroyed by whatever's happening around you, that would make you a really poor support person. You have to be skilled in putting your stuff, not shoving it down and forgetting about it, but putting it aside for this time, knowing that you can go back to it later. It's always there, it waits for you, and you can go back to it, but showing up for your clients, showing up for the people that need that support, requires you to be there for them, with compassion, with knowing, and skill. And then, once you leave that space, to take care of yourself in all the ways that we know we're supposed to. Go back and take care of yourself. renew, refresh, revitalize yourself, because then you're getting another call in 2 days, or your next client needs you to do something. If you're in this work full time, then that's what's going to happen. And so you have to be able to take care of yourself. I have a little ritual that I do when I'm on call for a client. When I have a birth client and I go on call at 38 weeks, that's when, I don't always do this perfectly, I'm saying that this is my plan, is I dial in sleep, nutrition, busy activities, late nights, and all of that, so that I can show up physically. I've been doing this for a long time, like I said, and my body is not what it used to be 20-something years ago. And doing an overnight birth for 18 hours just is not as easy as it was before. And I have to be even more intentional about how I take care of myself in every way, physical, mental, spiritual, so that I can show up for my clients. So being able to put my stuff aside, be here, and then go back, pick my stuff up, and move through my day, take care of my life, take care of myself, so that I can show up for my clients. It's a real mental load, but that's the work you have to do in order to show up every day for that shift or whatever.
I wanted to also, that and also the opposite that I was struggling with is I was seeing that my role was bleeding into my personal life. Like I was having a hard time allowing myself to be offline from the needs of my clients, and I mean within realistic boundaries, and having their mental energy impact how when I was showing up with my kids or my partner, and like had a moment to be like, that's not fair to me or them too. Like yes, I was doing a great job of holding space and keeping my basket shut during my client interactions, but then I was taking their junk and bringing it home with me and letting it all out everywhere. So I also found ritual to be helpful, and I kind of, when as a nurse, I have a badge and I clock in, and at the end of the shift, I clock out. And it's a very tangible moment. I was like, how can I do this? And I will literally, I have like fake clock in. Like I will do that. I like pull my fake badge on, and I'm like, I'm clocking in, and I'm in my doula world. I am all in. I'm theirs right now. And then I clock out, and I mentally like imagine it, and I call it my lacquer box, and I put all their stuff in my little black box, and I shut it up, and I can visualize myself putting it away, and then I know I can pull it right back out. It's like a Rolodex. Like, oh, you have a problem? And I shut it, and I put it away. And that has helped me be able to reverse, not spill, because it can get really murky, and there's so many blurred lines that I think that also can cause burnout, is that you are just bringing your basket of clients' experiences becomes so full because you're not dumping that, letting that have some air out time before you go into the next one.
So
I
that,
think to piggyback off what you're saying is you've got to leave everybody's stuff and know what is their stuff and what is your stuff. And I come in and exactly you said it, right? Like you knew you could not hold space in that moment. And you just have to know yourself, right? You just have to know yourself well enough to know that I can put that away, that's not mine, I can't hold this right now.
so that goes into the next question, which is what boundaries, rituals, practices, or forms of support have become essential for sustaining yourself in this work?
I think I talked about this on the panel yesterday, that I get like a crazy birth hangover from my birth, which lasts usually that like 3 days, and you're like, oh, I have a hangover, I'm tired, I'm grumpy, all of this.
She disappears,
I
right?
do. But those are my boundaries. I cut myself off from people and I internalize. But for my abortion work, I was really struggling because it was sometimes just a text, right? But sometimes it's just a text, nothing happened to me. And then it would be like weeks later, I'm like driving somewhere and I'm like, oh, text, right? So I found doing rituals and diving into something every day is better long term. And one thing that I really found worked well for me, because I did try a lot of things, was sound therapy. And I actually found this out last year at the conference. We had a beautiful sound bath, and I felt it in my heart. I felt myself pull into the ground, and I was completely transformed. So I do a lot of 8D music or 16D music, because I find that with that, it really makes your mind like move into the sound. That I do that every single day now. So I'll put either at nighttime or right in the morning. I'll listen to 15 minutes of the 8D, 16D, and just let myself to feel whatever feels come out of that. Sometimes I'm bawling my eyes out, or sometimes I'm like dancing while it's on. Whatever that feels like, I let it happen and I move on.
I'm gonna say something that seems real basic for everybody who's here. Cultivate your doula friendships.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna follow that up by drawing your attention to those lovely ladies over there
In
in
red.
red. My two best doula friends, Kim and Steph. We have an ongoing thread chat, and if I'm going to a birth, they know, oh, I'm going to a birth, where are you going? Sinai, oh, okay, how's it going? Oh, we're at 8 centimeters, how's it going? Oh, we're pushing. And just this running along of how things are going for me. Oh my God, I'm so tired. Oh my God, I really need to eat something, or whatever the kid. I'm leaving now. I'm getting a burger, even if it's 2 a.m. or if it's 11 a.m., whatever it is. I know I can count on these two. If it's been a real shitty experience, I can debrief with them. They're like my built-in doula community. I don't know how I would have survived the last, I don't know how many years we've been doing it, but let's call it 10 or so. I don't know how I could have made it through all of the birth work, postpartum work, weird clients, weird things happening without talking it out with them. They've been in this game just as long as I have, so they know, and they still can tell me pointers, and we share pointers with each other. So cultivate your doula friends, your friendships. Your doula friends are like gold, okay? Collectives are like gold. This is where you're gonna get your sustenance, your rejuvenation, and your will to like go on and take that next client to do it again, and your rest you can get from them too.
And when you need that break, you have those people that can take over.
Amen. Yeah.
I laugh and control me. And the good thing, I guess, about being in grief space and doing death work is I cry openly with people. Someone will argue and say that that is not appropriate, but when someone is dying and you are witnessing that moment and all of the emotions that go around it, I cry with them. I cry in that moment with them, and I let the emotions move as they come up.
Yeah, and when I am talking on that note too, and I had another book I was going to talk about, but when you are emoting in the moment with a family, most everyone is sure that that makes them feel seen and held in a different way, because in these sacred moments, people want you to connect with them on a human level. It's the same kind of like you are witnessing and it's affecting you. It's that they're seeing that you are being impacted, not necessarily that you're taking over and this experience is now yours and now they're having to hold you while you wait, but that you are showing them that you are impacted by their life or the loss of their child. And so especially when it comes to child loss, so many families want to make sure that their baby is remembered, that they're not forgotten. And so by even saying those words, like, I'm never going to forget you, that is what's going to sustain them too. So that's not a boundary, but it is in a way. Like, my boundary is that I am not going to feel bad about getting down in the weeds with them, holding hands and looking at their face and saying, like, your baby is always going to be in my heart and carry forward. So that is an important part of boundary holding with myself, even though there's some peer pressure to not, especially in nursing care, less so do it, but to not do that. And they're like, well, what are you doing over there in the corner? I'm like, I'm doing it for them, I'm not doing it for you. So, me and them, we're in this here. You deal with your problem here. Whatever this means to you on their healthcare providers. But it's really important. And the other piece I want to touch on is, like, with boundaries, is that having clear expectations, especially with client work, that is a gift to them. If they know, if you've communicated your boundaries, that is a gift to their ability to connect with you, because it's this murky, like, kind of like ambiguous relationships that I feel like allow both parties to feel hurt by missed connections or missed expectations. So that is also, like, very clearly, when I start working with clients, like, very clearly spelled out, like, here's the hours that I respond, here's what I can and cannot do for you, here's where my skills stop, are you okay with that? And so then it's like a real consensual relationship, because they know expectations and I know that they know, then that can already have this, like, support and safety.
Never look to me to have a conversation about boundaries. They're so elusive, I'm still chasing them. I think it's because I was raised in community. Like, I go back and I think like every time I thought that I had boundaries, I had clearly communicated them, the circumstances presented themselves that we fell outside of paradigms that made sense. It was almost unjust. And maybe it's because a lot of my work right now is with folks that are so systemically marginalized, and so boundaries is just feels like a form of weaponization. Do I clearly communicate my expectations or when they can reach me? Like I think that, but the parts where I feel like I most lost myself, and the parts that haunt me about this work are when I felt like I had to uphold a boundary that I felt that others would judge me if I crossed. And so in my book that I talked about yesterday, like the first page is a so far so good. It's a text I got from one of my clients that was dying. And I was their last phone call. Before they went into palliative sedation, they were not approved for MAID and took other measures in order to die. And I continued to send them texts after they had died. And I look at the last one I sent them, and it said, there was so much I wish I would have said. Most importantly, I love you too. Because they said they loved me. That was like the last thing they said to me. And I croaked, because what got in the way was if my colleagues hear me saying, I love you too, if my students, and my students were actually who picked me up, because I had to go teach our death grief and loss class the next day. It was my last year's cohort, and I was a fucking mess. And I said to them, you need to see what this work does. Like, you need to see what happens when you allow the fear of an outside administrative voice or paradigm that doesn't align with you dictate what you do in a caring moment. And to not have said to her, I love you too, she didn't get to hear that from the last phone call. That'll be life's work, to forgive myself for that. And so I think if you don't know how to do that after 30 decades, or it's like 3 decades of doing this, 30 decades forever and ever, I couldn't live 1,000 lifetimes where I will have learned everything. And so I think there's something so human about not counting up your births, not counting up all your experience, because nothing prepared me for that. It wouldn't have mattered if I had been a palliative care, like it wouldn't have mattered, because it was human being to human being that I felt unprepared to meet the moment, because I was so fearful of what somebody else might have judged as professional behavior. And never allow professionalism, as long as you're within scope of being a good human being, never allow that term or construct of professionalism get in the way for being a real human being in a real human moment.
So that actually goes right into my next question. How does this work change the way you understand humanity, relationships, grief, love, or what truly matters in life?
I go into every client knowing that they are going to be with me for a very short time. So I go in, I think somebody out there asked earlier, Casey, how do you do this work? How do you not get attached? I do. I go in and I know that this person is going to die. I know that I am going to fall in love with them, and I am going to grieve that loss. And damn it, it hurts, right? But you can't not. You can't not do that. I just walk in knowing that I have to get to the meat and potatoes of what we're talking about. I don't have time. I don't care about the weather. I don't care what your sports team is doing this year. You know, what do you want to do with your time you have here?
I think it's made me realize that at the end of the day, every single one of us wants like the same things. No matter whatever you look like, whatever your background is, however old you are, all the things we want to be seen, held, and loved. And that's it. That's it. That is it. That's the whole point. And so stripping away again all the roles and systems and everything, if we keep bringing it back to that, even when we're in those conversations which are harder, or even there's conflict, or you're like butting heads with somebody, I'm always like, this person also, when I want to wrinkle their neck, they want to be seen, held, and loved. So how can I shift, like, I mean, I don't like always the phrase kill them with kindness, like, but it's that mentality, like, this is a hurt person, and this is their hurt is on me, like, we are hurt people taking care of hurt people. And so at the end of the day, what can I do in this moment to make myself feel seen, heard, and loved, held and loved, and have this other person or all these people in my space have that same experience too.
Being in spaces where you see people at their most vulnerable at the beginning of life, giving life, bringing life into the world, or leaving life, and that's your work. This is your job. You're not, preparing tax accounts. You're not planting trees. You're actually witnessing these profound things. It has to change you. It distills everything down to, like what you just said, distills it right down to our very essence, which is, seen, heard, and loved, that sense of belonging that we all crave. You see it right there every single time you attend a birth or attend a dying person. And so then you see it in the supermarket, you see it when you're at the stoplight, you see that everybody went through that birth process. Everybody's gonna go through that death process. We're all so the same. And then there's that sense of compassion, like that we all arrived here basically in the same way, and then we've been through all kinds of shit to bring us where we are now. And it's honed my sense of compassion, which is not to say that you approve of or you're going to tolerate or put up with bad behavior. Hell no. But it actually helps to realize, this person who's an asshole, they also have been through the same things that I've been through. However, something went wrong along the way, and I'm going to take care of myself because I also deserve to be seen, heard, and loved, and move away. So it helps you to navigate dealing with difficult people, right? By seeing them, by distilling them down to their humanity too, and letting all the trappings fall away. It's easier for me to do that now after being in this work for so long. It's easier for me to do that and to see the pure humanity of people and then decide how I'm going to react to their behavior.
Okay, last question, and then we'll see if there's any questions at the end. What conversations about the emotional impact of caregiving do you think are still missing from professional training in care spaces?
I think what I said earlier is really important, that full spectrum piece where how are we helping them cope in between those such drastic maybe differences, but also you're feeling the same, like we talked about, like that hope, grief, and love, and all those intertwined, those can happen in both of those spaces, and it's naive to think that those don't carry into each other. I tell my clients, you're always playing, when you go into a birth, you're always playing with everyone else's bad day or good day, right? That they can kind of control your outcome based on what happened. So for us not to think that doesn't happen to doulas, for us, it's just, I think going forward, it is something that I definitely can't be silent about. I know we just had a little pilot training for our 8 members to do an abortion training. So it's something that I think that we'll definitely have more conversations around, but it's something that needs to be brought into these bigger trainings. Is that aftercare piece for the doulas, not for the clients that they're supporting, but how are we going to show these guys how we can keep them avoiding that burnout rate that we talked about?
Social determinants of health. That discussion is missing in a huge way in mainstream doula trainings. Nobody's talking about your client who's food insecure or underhoused and why this might impact her behavior, her ability to show up for appointments, or whatever. Instead, they're labeled and stigmatized and judged and put into a category. And that's it's just not there. We learn how to do the double hip squeeze and maybe have a right contract and things like that. But business side of the doula world is also kind of missing from mainstream doula. But the social determinants of health, how does systemic racism, how does transphobia, how does all of those issues, all the isms affect people in their everyday life and affect how they show up as your client, and so therefore how you are going to show up for them in the support that you're giving.
I'm gonna circle back to death.
Yes.
The healthcare community isn't taught about death and dying, right? That is plain and simple. I could go on that forever. Taught to fix. Doctors are, I've spoke with another doula at one point who worked in a hospice facility, and a doctor was leaving a 99-year-old patient who was riddled with all kinds of cancer, and the doctor was crying because the patient died, not because they were sad, but because they felt they had failed. Like, we have set our medical system up for failure because they don't talk about death and dying enough. They don't make it a normal part of life.
Failure.
Death is
That
failure.
is something wrong. My stance on this too, and as my wheels are spinning right now too, because I'm also I'm a trainer and an educator too. But I think that one thing that is missing for me is mentorship and like an apprenticeship model. Like, I've learned my biggest lessons with a guide by my side to bring me to the situation at hand. And even, like sometimes it's like shoving you in a room that you're scared of, but they're right next to you doing it. So it's less like, I feel like also with trainings, we're learning the tools, we're doing it in community, but it's bringing people into those moments and we're really missing that mentorship, apprenticeship model for doula work especially, because that is what's going to bring sustainability, community, real tactile learning too in the moment. And there's so many barriers, and it's hard to do. There's a burden as the leaders and the mentors. There's a burden on those people, and there's an emotional toll. And also, what is the alternative? Like that model, that community-based learning, that I think is missing, and there needs to be more momentum back to that form of learning.
So all of that, and I think we need to provide skills around what is evidence, as we've talked about. What does evidence-informed practice even mean? How can we help folks navigate myths and disinformation as it's coming forward? How are we playing in with the way that we represent data and evidence, and the ways that I saw pieces of stuff this week that I thought, actually, that's not how the evidence is speaking, but we've taken it up and travels by word of mouth, like telephone tag is how research kind of lives in our community. I think that is missing. I think that there's lots of opportunity for continuing development around the muckiest parts of this, like the parts where you are standing and your client's looking at you and can't make it to the food bank until next month, and they say, do you mind if you lend me blah, blah, blah. And like nothing prepares you for that except appropriate supports that are around you. But yeah, there's lots of opportunities to continue thinking forward in terms of what we need. Activists, policy writers, we need to learn how to mobilize. We need to learn how to partner with people who have research capacity and policy writing expertise to actually create systemic change. So yeah, there's lots of room.
The one thing that I'll say in regards to this is you will never know everything. And that's where you need to lean into your community, because there's going to be someone beside you that knows what you don't know. And together, that means you know more.
I also think, to a certain extent, we need to be having these conversations in front of not just doulas. Like, I almost wish this panel was in front of an accounting, conference, and they're like, guess what, guys? We're talking about death. Death and taxes.
That's
But
a good workshop on it.
I know, right? But that we get it, and that other people don't. So we need to also keep chipping away at other people's comfort level around this type of conversation, and show that it isn't scary, and it's okay. You don't have to live in you don't have to be a doula to be able to have these conversations with your loved ones. And yes, we may have to doula them to get that point, but I want more of these conversations in really bizarre spaces so that we can start to destigmatize them and make them safer and spacious.
I will talk to somebody about their death plan in the bank line.
Right.
Yes. And make them squirm.
Yes.
And I like it.
I'm never gonna carry that conversation with them.
Thank you. Yes. I tell people when I have these conversations, I'm here to make you uncomfortable. I hope you are uncomfortable. And then I push them into it.
Safely uncomfortable.
All right, are there any questions in the audience for the last panel? All right, well then give a round of applause for the last panel.